Tomorrow evening, BBC1 begins a three-part dramatisation of the life of the great American civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King. King, a portrait of an extraordinary man, will be shown over the next 3 evenings on BBC1, beginning tomorrow at 8:10. In 10 minutes, the Eurovision Song Contest 1979. First, the news on BBC1 with Peter Woods.
The House of Commons underground car park still sealed as investigations continue into the car bomb attack in which Mr. Harry Neve was killed. Mr. Neve, the Conservative spokesman on Northern Ireland, died as he drove up the exit ramp. So far, Scotland Yard has not said whom police believe is responsible for the attack. But a spokesman said that claims made last night, apparently on behalf of the Irish National Liberation Army and the Provisional IRA, are being treated with deadly seriousness. And just over an hour ago, another call, again said to be on behalf of the INLA, was made to the BBC's Belfast newsroom. The statement said a so-called active service unit was responsible and had now returned safely to base. From Belfast, Patrick Burns.
The INLA say in this evening's statement that Mr. Neve was specially selected for assassination. They say he was well known for what they call his rabid militarist call for more repression against the Irish people, and for strengthening what they describe as the SAS murder gangs, soldiers who the INLA claim have no qualms about murdering Irish people. The INLA say they assassinated Mr. Neve in pursuit of their long-term objective of getting British troops withdrawn from Northern Ireland. The INLA statement, issued from Dublin, was promised yesterday when they claimed responsibility for the assassination of Mr. Neve. In it, they discount reports that they are a cover group for the IRA or for any other organisation.
A major review of security throughout the country began today as forensic experts continued a detailed examination of the wreckage of Mr. Neve's car. During the weekend, police are interviewing hundreds of people in their search for clues. A report from Christopher Morris.
This is the spot from where Scotland Yard believes someone might have taken a photograph which could help trap Mr. Neve's assassins. That's if the bomb was indeed planted at the Commons. Yard chiefs still believe the bomb could have been strapped under the MP's car parked outside his Westminster home. How hopeful are they of catching the killers?
Of course, I regard this investigation as a difficult one, but one we will certainly use every endeavour to bring the perpetrators of this crime to prosecution. It is a most odious and repulsive crime, and every Metropolitan Police officer of every branch is most anxious to do all he can to secure these people.
Throughout the country, all police have been put on alert and security precautions stepped up. Personal protection is the major worry now. While leaders like Mrs. Thatcher have had regular police guards, other prominent politicians will now have them too. Today in Abingdon, Mr. Neve's constituency, the Conservative Party headquarters opened a condolence book to record tributes to the MP who met a violent death. Another tribute paid to Mr. Neve today came in Ireland from the Irish Republic's opposition leader, Dr. Garret Fitzgerald.
We who mourn for our own colleague and for other politicians struck down in Northern Ireland extend our sympathy to the widow and family and the political colleagues of a courageous Englishman. I ask you to rise in respect to his memory and perhaps to use this moment of silence to pray for an end to murder and violence as political weapons in these islands.
The former Liberal leader, Mr. Jeremy Thorpe, has accepted an invitation from his North Devon constituency to fight the general election. It's understood that his lawyers will be making an early application for his trial, set for April the 30th, to be postponed. Mr. Thorpe made his position known at a meeting of his constituency association this evening. Earlier today, Mr. Thorpe and his wife Marion were helping party workers to prepare and run a jumble sale to raise much-needed funds for the general election campaign. Mr. Thorpe and 3 others are charged with conspiracy to murder, and Mr. Thorpe is further charged with incitement to murder. Our political editor says that although the Liberal Party leader, Mr. Steele, is making no official comment, he's known to consider that the decision is entirely a matter for Mr. Thorpe and his constituency association. Now abroad, Uganda claims to have driven back the Tanzanian-led invasion force which has been bombarding Kampala for the past 3 days. But it seems that the fighting is all being done by Libyans, now that the Ugandan army has virtually disintegrated. At Malaba, on the Kenyan-Ugandan border, the stream of refugees has been continuing. Hundreds have been coming across, bringing all they still possess with them. Most aren't prepared to talk, but a few have spoken of bombs landing in the middle of Kampala and of Ugandan soldiers looting and hijacking cars. Many foreigners have been crossing to Kenya, including diplomats and United Nations officials and their families. The UN was hoping to get all of its people out of Uganda by this evening. In the United States, scientists are still struggling to cool down the nuclear reactor near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where radiation has been leaking since earlier in the week. Yesterday, pregnant women and young children living near the power station were evacuated by order of the governor. From Harrisburg, Martin Bell reports.
Evacuate the area now.
The Pennsylvania governor had ordered the evacuation of mothers-to-be and very young children. Schools were closed, and in the community of Middletown, closest to the power station, a lot of people, young and old, were getting ready to leave. If the mood occasionally bordered on panic, mostly the evacuation was quiet and orderly, and authorities emphasized that even with radiation levels rising, the move was purely precautionary. Young children who hadn't got relatives to go to outside the supposed danger area were taken to a sports stadium in the nearby town of Hershey and entertained there, while officials worked out what next to do with them.
In Germany, 30,000 people afraid of some similar accident rallied in Hanover. They were demonstrating against a proposal to build a nuclear waste reprocessing plant at Gorleben on the east-west border. Spurred on by the news from Pennsylvania, thousands of people arrived in Hanover from all over northern Europe. It was the country's biggest ever anti-nuclear protest. If it's built, the Gorleben plant will not only reprocess nuclear waste, but be used to store the highly poisonous residue as well. The protesters shouted, "We all live in Pennsylvania." Most of the world's international airlines, including British Airways, have agreed at a meeting in Geneva to put up fares by between 5 and 10%. The rise is to offset higher fuel costs, but a spokesman said most of the increases would be nearer 5 than 10%. Arab foreign ministers meeting in Baghdad have agreed on a complete boycott of Egypt. They'll cut all diplomatic and economic ties, including about $2 billion in aid. But while it's apparently a victory for Egypt's hardline neighbors, who've persuaded Saudi Arabia to go along with them, our correspondent says it could be seen as a compromise, since the meeting agreed no action against the United States. But President Sadat's peace with Israel seems to be massively popular in Egypt. His homecoming from Washington via Bonn was easily his biggest welcome in 8 years in office. As for today's Arab action, the already isolated Egyptians are hoping that the lost foreign aid will be made up by the West. Former Prime Minister Bhutto of Pakistan is having an appeal made against his death sentence after all. Political friends, ignoring his instructions not to plead with General Zia, have filed a last-minute petition for mercy. The deadline is midnight, after which Mr. Bhutto could hang any time. And finally, sport. Arsenal are through to the FA Cup final for the second year running, after beating Wolves 2-0 in the semi-final. But in the other match, Liverpool and Manchester United drew 2-2, which means a replay on Wednesday. In the Scottish League Cup final, Rangers came back from a goal down to beat Aberdeen 2-1. Of the 34 starters in the Grand National, only 7 finished. The favourite Alverton was one of 2 horses killed in the race, which was won for the first time by a Scottish-trained horse, Rubstick, ridden by Maurice Barnes. Alverton's fall at Beechersbrook is described by Julian Wilson.
Wagner pressed by Zongalira and Rubstick, and Alverton towards the outside, and Artistic Princess, they jump Beechers, and Wagner over it, and Alverton's gone at Beechersbrook, but all the other leaders seem to be over, but Mr. Snowman is down as well at Beechers.
Peter O'Sullivan takes up the commentary for the closing stages of the race.
It's anybody's race as they race into the final furlong. And it's Rough Stick on the near side with the advantage over Zongolero, the weakening Rough and Tumble as they race up towards the line. It's going to be a victory for Scotland. It's Rough Stick from Zongolero in the National. And as they come to the line, Rough Stick wins it. Second is Zongolero. Third is Rough and Tumble. Fourth, yet again, is the gallant Pill Garlic.
And that's the news tonight. Now let's have a look at the weather.
It'll be fairly cold everywhere during the night, with a slight frost in places. And tomorrow, temperatures will range between 6 degrees, 43 degrees Fahrenheit in the north of Scotland, a little lower than today, to 11 degrees centigrade, 52 Fahrenheit in southern England, about the same as today. On BBC2 now, Gennady Rostesvensky conducts the BBC Symphony Orchestra in a programme of works by Prokofiev. Match of the day will be at approximately 11:20 this evening. But now on BBC1 we join an estimated 500 million viewers in 19 countries for the Eurovision Song Contest 1979, which this year comes live from Jerusalem. The time is 9 o'clock.